Bye! My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back to another episode of Duck Dogs, everybody. I am your host, Josh Miller. And before we get going, we need to make sure that we take the time to thank our wonderful sponsors that make this show possible. So thank you to DUK. DUK Premium Performance Sport 3020 is a blend of food that I have my dogs on here, my personal dogs, also the dogs at the kennel as we're ramping up our training season. It's just a fantastic food. We've had a just great luck on. Of course, there's not a one food fits all, but these dogs just across the board have been fantastic on this food, whether it's energy level, coat, recovery time, just across the board, we've been very happy with it. So www.uknuba.com. Also, thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs for your four-legged hunting partner. As you head into the training season, be sure to stock up on everything that you need to make this training season as successful as possible. And there's no better place to do that than Gun Dog Supply. Great product selection, great people, great customer service just across the board. You'll be very happy. www.gundogsupply.com. Also, thank you to Kent Cartridge. Kent is our shotgun shell of choice as we go through the hunting season, but also as you head into training season. If you need blanks to make sure that you are shooting, it's still getting the noise, but keeping it safe without shot being projected, the field blanks are there for you. So www.kentcartridge.com for your field blanks for training season. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test rated kennel, both in the intermediate and in the large. And as we head into these summer months, we have the fan. We also have the kennel cot. We also have, there's so many great products there that you have to choose from, that ultimately it all goes around keeping your dog safe and happy and healthy. www.luckyduck.com. Also, thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka Gear is your premium option for outdoor clothing. We all know what Sitka does for you in the field during the fall and winter months, but their everyday clothing keeps you in the field longer for those training times as well. So go check out the everyday wear. Again, comfortable. It'll dry out quick on those days you're doing water work and your dog is soaking your heel leg over and over again. www.sitkagear.com. Last but not least, thank you to Retriever Roadmap. Retriever Roadmap is your go-to option for training your own dog at home, with a big video library to walk you through from a puppy all the way through advanced training. A great community, strike teams to give you training groups to go do. I mean, it's a fantastic program. We are crazy proud of it. And right now we have our spring promotion, our spring training promotion going on, which waives the $200 initiation fee. So it is free to get in the program. You just pay your small monthly allowance and you are in. So www.retrieverroadmap.com. Well, hope everyone is off to a fantastic start to your week. I guess it's almost mid to end week now, but hope everyone has had a fantastic week and is going into a great weekend here. For us here at the kennel, it's just a fun time of year because it finally feels like we're back. Like, we cannot at all squabble or complain about the very mild winter that we had, but it is finally feeling like it's back to training season. And so we're excited. The dogs are excited. We're back to running kind of the setups that I would expect to be running here in the spring. And it's just a fun time of year. But I wanted to make sure that we got in the studio here and had time to continue on this little mini series that I wanted to do. That's all about the mental approach that we take into the training season. And why I think this is so important is there are just too many times that you go through the motions. And without a plan, without going into this with the right mindset, I just don't feel like you're ever going to be nearly as successful as you could be otherwise. And to take that a layer deeper, there is no ABC cookie cutter answer to what should my mentality be? What should my approach be? And that's why I'm trying to take kind of a broad spectrum of across the board, different people in different situations that might shed some light on how they're approaching this that you can take and apply to your dog. And so, last week's episode here with Ben Commodore, I thought was fantastic as far as understanding the guide side of it. I think we all see guide dogs and the number of days they get to hunt, the number of birds they get to pick up, and I think it's so great and so awesome. But you don't see the other side of it. One thing that I didn't really realize, again, this is very geographically, I guess a geographical challenge rather, is Ben only has about 4 months to fix what was unraveled during the season, and then progress, and then prepare for the season, and then do it all over again, being up in Canada. And so it was really interesting. And then I found it fascinating how his approach, how his mentality has to be so different because of those challenges going into the season. So I love that. I loved the conversation. And this week I am ecstatic to bring in someone who has become a very close friend of mine over this last couple of years, and Carlos Flores. And Carlos is a professional trainer out on the East Coast. And Carlos, thank you for spending the time. I know you have a busy schedule, so I appreciate you carving out an hour here to sit down with us.
Well, thanks, Josh, and happy to be on.
So give us a little background of, just kind of, you, what you do, and, just give us a little background on who Carlos is kind of in a nutshell.
Sure thing. So I'd probably start out by saying I'm a little bit of an unconventional individual in this space, given I'm a born and raised city kid from Boston, Mass. Accents are optional, I can tell you that. And ultimately, I came from actually more of a corporate background, in my early adult life, but life circumstances, and a chance because of one dog actually pushing me to become more intrigued and really involved in understanding dog behavior in the dog training space. And going into that led into actually me acquiring my first Labrador Retriever, and from there on, pushing the boundaries to understanding the retriever game from hunting, both waterfowl and upland, and again, having that really good dog that's going to get you invited back on a hunt, or it's going to do well out in the testing field. And because of that, and just with some certain opportunities that came up, I actually had the opportunity to make this a full-time venture, and couldn't be happier about that decision due to the fact that I've had an opportunity to just meet legends in the field, be mentored and coached by incredible people, and meet incredible clients as well. Really, probably the highlight of all this is the people that I've met in this space, both professionally, on a personal level, and then again, the clients I've had the opportunity to help, because just the thanks and the things that they've given me from a feedback standpoint of why they appreciate working with me and why I appreciate working with them. It's something that you understand really well, is these are relationships that hopefully last a long time, if not forever. And you made an impact in that person's life, and they've made an impact on yours. So that's really what I got going on up here. Again, training often, training my client dogs often as well, and making sure that ultimately we're hitting our SMART goals. And I'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, man. I think one of the things that makes you so special, as far as I'm concerned, in this space, is that you're a great listener. And I think way too often in the professional space, we see people that maybe they're great directors, but they're not great listeners. And that's something I really picked up, with you, Carlos, right away. It was that, and you're a great relationship person. You're very genuine in wanting to help people, which I think is a great attribute to have in this space. But the listening part of it, again, they're just it's a talent that, especially when you are even I'll say quote unquote professional. And what I mean by that is like broad spectrum in here. So like anyone that's taken in anything for anyone, not just specifically dogs, right? But when you're a professional in what you do, sometimes it's hard to listen to the non-professionals' opinion, thoughts, ideas. And there's maybe some arrogance there, maybe some ignorance, maybe the attitude is closing your ears and not allowing you to understand the entire picture. But that was the one thing that really jumped out to me right away with Carlos was great listener, very genuine, and when you listen, you're able to understand not only more from the people's perspective, but I believe it also opens your eyes to be able to read the dog that much better, because you're understanding what the people are telling you. They may not even be telling you what they think they're telling you, but if you're listening, you can see it. So Carlos, that's something I noticed with you right away.
Well, thanks. And that's a really great point as well. Listening to the individuals, even if they don't necessarily know what they're telling you, certainly a skill that has to be with experience comes, as well as just understanding someone and really hearing them out. Ultimately, you might be the person to kind of have them understand, once you've really taken in the inputs from what they've given you, what's going to be their end goal. And if you can do that in an appropriate, respectful, and professional way, the amount that somebody may listen might be even greater than you initially thought. Time and time again, I've worked with clients that some others like maybe warned you about them. They just didn't get the right vibe from them, or another individual that maybe worked with them said, "Yeah, have fun with that individual." And then again, you hear them out, you really get to know them and understand what they're looking for. And then the next thing you know, they lighten up and they become a dear friend. That's happened plenty of times in this industry, as well as any others that I've been in. And it's a really nice experience to have.
Mm-hmm. It's fantastic, man, and you're good at it. Okay, so let's kind of dig in here, to some thoughts, and the one that I really want to start off with is the importance of having a plan, and especially you from a professional standpoint. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because from what I see way too often that people are I'm using air quotes here. I know you can't see me, but air quotes, that they're training, but their quote unquote training could be going in the backyard and throwing the bumper in the same spot, in the same place, in the same cadence that they have for the last 3 weeks in a row. And I mean, on one hand, I think it's great that you are doing something with the dog. On the other hand, you're certainly not making progress. And so, going in with a plan, I think, is so important. And I'll tell you a quick little story that came up just last night. So, if anyone has been around our Retriever Roadmap, specifically Eric, who heads the strike team in my area, a lot of times at the kennel, but great guy. He's he's the head baseball and basketball coach at Concordia over in the Twin Cities here. And great leader, great person, but once in a while he'll just call me and we'll just kind of talk some things over. And one thing he was talking about yesterday was that they had their first baseball game here not too long ago, and he said we won easily, but there's a lot of things we need to clean up. And I was like, just being a ex-baseball geek, like, so what specifically are you talking about? And he's like, we need to learn how to play catch. And I was like, obviously, if you're a baseball person, you know what he's meaning. If you're not a baseball person, that may seem very elementary, of like, you're talking, high school, college age kids that they need to learn how to play catch and they're playing baseball. But playing catch and playing catch are two very different things. And so I loved the conversation because this goes everything to what we talk so much about, going back to the basics. Don't let your fundamentals get out of whack. Don't let your obedience suffer. Don't take obedience for granted. All these things. This is that to a T. And I told him, I knew he was busy. He was walking into practice. Like, let me tell you a quick 30-second story. And so what I told him, well, I'll tell the same 30-second story here, is, when I was in school, I was literally at my first ever recruiting camp. So you get to this school, there's probably, 30, 40 kids that none of us know each other. And so you kind of pair up and you warm up and you start playing catch. And I'll preface, this is a college, coach. So I'm going to give you guys the earmuffs here, because if you have kids in the car or you need to put your earbuds in, there'll be a couple of cuss words here, just to give you the authenticity of the story. And so we're warming up, playing catch, and not the head coach, but one of the coaches walks in, and he looks around and he literally yells, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" And we all just stopped and we looked and we had no idea what he was talking about. And, he's like, "I'll tell you, you guys don't have any fucking idea what you're doing." And we're like, literally, we're like, of course, this obviously knocking us down a peg, right? Because we think we're hot shots of hey, we're coming in on this, this big school, this recruiting camp. And then all of a sudden, this is our welcome. But later on, I understood it. We didn't know what we were doing. We were throwing a ball back and forth to each other, but we weren't warming up. We weren't being intentional. That was the whole point. And so when he brought everybody together, he goes, well, the first thing you are going to learn is that if you want to compete at this level, you need to go into each practice, each game, each situation, and have an intent of getting better. Because if you're not intentionally getting better, you will unintentionally get worse. That was impactful to me. And, for me, looking back on that, okay, we're playing catch. I can see to this day the kid I was playing catch with, and we're kind of small talking a little bit, we're throwing back and forth. I'm not intentionally looking at my motion. I'm not intentionally picking out spots in his chest, his face, his whatever to hit. I'm not intentionally going through this. I'm unintentionally going through emotion so we can get to a different part of practice. But that sets the tone for how we're going to go through that practice. And so I just think I love that line that if you're not intentionally getting better, you're unintentionally getting worse. I right. love that. And so, anyways, that's my little preface to kind of what we're going to go into. But Carlos, kind of give me a little bit of an idea here. So, first off, do you see that, do you see, people that maybe unintentionally go through without a game plan, and versus maybe people that do, and how important do you think a plan is as you go into training season?
That's a great question. And quick answer is yes. Intentionality is prime for anyone to understand, especially in this space. Especially retrievers probably have to be the epitome of that, given that with them, they're in that routine, but if that routine, stays level or doesn't grow aside from whatever it is, that the retriever will tell you, I know this and I'm just going to keep doing this because that's all you ever ask of me. But then, you sense some frustration from them coming along, and frustration with yourself that you're not progressing. You talk about our strike teams and the meetups and those opportunities, time and time again, when we all do our thing up in the Northeast team, there are certainly times that we'll speak to each other about it, whether it be myself and another individual, or that other team members where they're saying, yeah, this is what I'm doing in the yard, or, it's just me. You really get that, it's just me, I'm solo training type of stance on that. And I completely understand, having to do certain things on your own when you just lack those resources. But if you have intentionality and understand where you're trying to go, then you can get creative as long as you have the resources to do that. I'll give you an example. I was working with an individual, this gentleman, I can't believe it, 76 years old, and he's working with a high-powered retriever. This dog is a Ferrari. And we were working on a particular drill. And funny enough, him and I, we were just talking about like how we get so much done. And he showed me a little trick. He'd send her off, say, kennel, 15, 20, 30 yards away. So he could set up a spot that he needed to get to and just break up the time of that particular session to complete the drill. And it's not that, he's necessarily out of shape or, he'll say he's not as fast as he used to be. But that being said, he's being productive and he's being resourceful in those particular moments to get this dog to the next level. And that was just an amazing thing to see because, again, it's just, if you're intentional about what you're going out there to do, and if you have a plan to get better, or you have those goals to get better, then that really can set the tone for how you're going to be impactful in your dog's mind. A big thing as well from the professional standpoint is that we have timelines. Josh, I know you've spoken to having timeline, trying to make those timelines fluctuate given the dog in front of you, but, depending on who we're working for or what we do in our programs, it may not be so flexible. So when you have timelines, we have to be even more intentional about the sessions that we're having with those dogs so that ultimately we're reaching the end result for what the client is expecting. And so you have to be in the moment with those dogs. You have to understand your plans with them. What's the goal of that particular session, right? How am I going to get even 1% better in this 5, 10, 15-minute time span? And so when you go out there into the field, putting that mindset there as much as you can. You don't have to be perfect at it, but being consistent in doing that, you trust me, it will compound on itself and you will see those results come. And the next thing you know, you're going to be jumping on the air, clicking your heels saying, we got it. We got this. Let's move on to the next thing.
Man, I love that. I love the 1% better, because just that little bit. And I think that's what, from a plan or from being intentional or, we talk about all these things. I think all the stuff is great, but, let's not confuse that with, you don't need to go from an intermediate level dog to an advanced dog in one session. I mean, we're talking baby steps. We're talking how do we, and man, a 1% better might be on a terrible day, right? The dog is off. It's all over the place. Don't know what's going on. There's a female in heat in the kennel that's throwing all the boys off. Okay, how do we control this to where we can have success and just take that 1% of a step? And I love that part of it. And I think for us, you talk about the timeline, and man, it's so right. I mean, when you add timelines to anything, stress immediately gets involved to an extent, on our side at least, right? Expectations are very different. The challenge is very different than when you have your own dog. I think training your own dog, to me, is the epitome of the enjoyment of this process, because there is no timeline, there is no stress. But I also think where we have the advantageous situations are, we have the time, right? When we do this for a living, we're out there every single day doing it. We usually have the resources, whether that is tools, whether that is property, whether that's water, whether that, what have you, birds. We have things that are certainly desirable, but the undesirable part of that oftentimes can be that timeline. But I love that approach, that 1% better. So as you look at, Carlos, from your season, like let's talk about your personal dogs, because I mean, I've spoken on this in the past that my personal dogs oftentimes take a back seat to the dogs that are in for training in the kennel, because my dogs aren't paying the bill like the dogs are in for training, right? So how I'm really interested for you and your dogs, like how do you see, like what are the challenges that you see, and then how do you go from assessing the season that you had before, and then how do you make your game plan and apply it in that training season so that you're prepared for the next season?
It's a great question, Josh. In terms of, I really think about my personal dogs. I have 3 retrievers right now that I'm really putting through the ranks here. I have actually two puppies under the age of one and one 4-year-old that, you consider a finished dog, advanced dog, really at that handling and seasoned level. And thinking back to, I'll start with, last season, we had goals. And I had goals with the puppy's development as I required them last summer. I had goals with my older dog from our hunting and testing needs, or testing goals, as you can say. And we didn't meet all those goals. Those reasons being, again, investing that time, right? Trying to get out there and be 1% better. Did I hit that every day? I'll tell you no. It's because when you're trying to prioritize your days, given life, especially on the professional side, again, there's a lot of dogs that take priority over. It's a blessing and a curse of being in this space on a professional level. We get to be with incredible dogs on a day-to-day basis. We have the resources, we have the tools, but ultimately, if you're not putting in the time that you should and the time allotted that you have, you won't see the results. In addition to that, if you don't have the appropriate plans to, really attack your personal goals, that also can get into the past. So, in understanding that, finishing up last season and not fully hitting the goals that I would have liked, I really made it a point during the winter to have a plan for this season, to have what I would consider now more SMART goals. And by saying SMART, I mean they're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time bound. And so when you put that down on paper, now you have an ability to create an action plan. So now with every session, and this year I'm already seeing that this late spring or late winter into early spring, the difference already from last year to this year is that with those SMART goals in place, the dogs are progressing. In spades, they're progressing. We're chipping away at those things. But I walk off from sessions so much more, feeling like we had a good session. Don't get me wrong. We certainly have our pitfalls, and there's times that we're in a grinding place and stuff. Going back to the puppies there, when you're going from that foundation to the intermediate level, and making sure we can get to, I could consider like bigger dog stuff, the cooler stuff. It certainly was, it felt like it was a while to get there. That being said, the intentionality was behind it. And what you're seeing is cleaner results, especially as concepts advance. Not feeling like you have to go back and forth and simplify more, or not feeling like you're just in a slog in one particular thing. I'm already noticing the difference in having these plans in place for these dogs versus with whether it be my work dogs or my client dogs, or my older lab there, is that the dogs are just flying through some of these things because, again, we put such an emphasis on being great on the foundation, really having that plan in place, and they're going through it. So the SMART goals have been really important for this season. And again, already seeing the results of that. It's just been a lot better from an overall working and mindset attitude. The last thing I'll put in there too is just, again, the time allotted that you have, that's important. So if you feel like you have 7 minutes to conduct something, trust me, you can be productive in 7 minutes and get 1% better if you have your plan in place. So being specific for whatever task it is you're trying to get better at, you know what that looks like. Measuring what that looks like. Understand how to measure what is your overall goal there. So if I just want that come to heel to look a little bit nicer, how am I going to, is it the dog a lot more square to me than they were this morning or yesterday afternoon? That's measurable. You can put those things in place. And clearly the dog's able to achieve these things. They've shown it time and time again in other exercises. So understand that these things can be achievable. So, and then is it relevant, right? How clean I want my dog's obedience to look, how clean I want their intermediate work or advanced work, that's all going to be put up against a test, whether it be I'm successful on my hunts, we're really retrieving every bird that's ever fallen, or I'm passing in my tests, fitting up against the standard there, right? What I'm doing has to be relevant to those standards. And then from the time standpoint, the time is what I deem it from my personal dog standpoint. I will tell you that when you're in the professional space, especially with retrievers, at times you find that, you're doing a little bit of the comparison game out there, whether it be with social media or local friends and mentors and things like that. They're like, I have this dog running, qual level stuff at 11 months old, and you're like, I'm just through foundational work right now, right? And then, but that'll end up working itself out in the end. If you stick to your goals, you stick to your plan that you've put down for yourself. Intentionality is going to be the name of the game, and making sure that you stick to those intentions. Trust me, that's going to really get you through the hard times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things I really loved that you mentioned there was that it doesn't take an hour. Like, you don't need to have like this grand training day every day to make any kind of progress. And one thing that I find is so interesting, and Carlos, I'd be interested to see if you see this on your side too. But every once in a while, you get somebody, and I would challenge everybody listening just to reflect on themselves on this. But every once in a while, you talk with someone that like you almost feel like they're finding a reason to fail, right? Like, and you question, like, do you even really want this? And so for example, the other day, I had a phone call with a guy who was just looking for some advice, some help. I'm trying to talk through this with him, and I mean, it was like before I could get anything out of my mouth, right? So this guy wanted to bring the dog to the next level as far as advanced handling, and I'm trying to, I've never met you, I don't know your dog, I don't know anything about you, so I'm trying to kind of vet out a little bit. I'm like, okay, so like, tell me about how your obedience is right now. And he's like, perfect. Okay, well, with you're struggling with whistle sit, so it's not perfect, right? So and then okay, well, the first thing that I would do is get in a new environment. All right, on that. Okay, well, get in another new, like where I'm going with this, and I won't go through the whole conversation, but like at the end of the day, I could have told this guy that, hey, here's the golden platform of how you do this, and he would say, I don't have, like, one of the things, this was wild to me. One of the things was that he really wants the dog proficient in the water because he does a lot of duck hunting. I'm like, okay, that's great. He's like, but I don't have access to water. And I'm like, well, like, there's got to be something, right? You can go down to a lake. You can go down to, a public boat launch. You go, nope, can't do that. It's too dangerous. It's too busy. It's too this, too that. Can't do it. And I'm like, well, like, man, like what do you want me to say here? Like, I get to a point that's like you have to want this enough to be creative enough to make it work, right? Just saying that you can't do it, but you still want the result, like, that's not going to happen. And so what I loved about, that on your side, when you said, if you have 7 minutes, what do you make out of that 7 minutes? I think that's a big deal. But do you see that, Carlos? Do you see, there's certain people that want it or are going to go get it, and then there are certain people that they want it, but maybe it's an excuse. How do you see that? Like, because I'm sure you do see it. Is it they don't want to put in the work? Is it they want an excuse come season when it doesn't look perfect to say why it doesn't look perfect? Like, what's your perspective on that?
My gosh, you see it all the time. You see it. It's really any space, especially in the dog world too. Like, let's step away and not even talk about like hunting dogs here. It's like any dog, they'll make an excuse for, why the dog is too excitable and jumps on everyone that comes in. Yet they don't want to implement just a little bit of structure. Having that dog understand place in the home, right? They think it's, I don't have the time to do it. I'm too busy. Or they're too young. They don't understand this yet. I don't want to spend on it, right? Spend the money. So yes, you see it all the time. However, I think, what you'll probably understand this better than anyone is it's frankly us as professionals. I almost find it to be like a responsibility to really have someone understand the importance of it, whether it be they see how our dogs are or they see, something successful that they saw online or something like that, or they read about a particular plan or program that did catch their interest a little bit. If they just have a little bit that interest, I'm going to say that maybe that is a little bit of a want to. Let's see how we can actually make that a little bit a lot, because it really is going to be worth your while. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people out there that they'll be stone on that. I'm not going to get off of this island. I just, I really don't want to get into the obedience. I don't find it fun. I really don't think that my dog needs me to go to other properties and show them different looks. I don't think that the dog really, I'm having a hard time with my dog and handling, but I don't think they should be kenneled while we're traveling to a space, right? Those are all those excuses that somebody puts up that, again, they just want the dog to almost know what they want and really just figure it out on their own. I've certainly met those people. But ultimately, if you don't want it, I think that's a great way of just saying it, how you put it earlier. If you don't covet that awesome feeling of seeing your dog in a great place, being successful, and being the dog that you really envisioned when you pick them up, then it's just going to be a long, hard road.
Amen. Well, and I think, Carlos, I'm sure you would echo this. We're not saying that you have to have the same level of standard or goal that you and I have, Carlos. Like, we're not saying that everybody has to have that, right? But if you don't have that and you don't want it and you don't put in the work for it, you cannot be frustrated with the results when they don't show up, whether that's, later on this summer or in the field this fall, right? It's no different than if I was overweight and I wanted to lose weight, but I use the excuse, I just don't have time for the gym. Okay, well, you don't want to make the time, right? And I get everybody's different, right? But I mean, like, for me, when we get into summer training, I have to shift my schedule around, and oftentimes I will be doing my workouts at 4 a.m. Do I like getting up at 3:30? Absolutely not. Like, there's nothing fun to me about getting up at 3:30 to do it, but if I don't do it, I don't get it done. And now, if I deemed that the extra, hour and a half of sleep was more important to me, that's okay. But I also then can't be upset when I look in the mirror and go, I haven't lost any weight, right? And I think that's an easy analogy on this, because I think we can all relate, right? We can all relate to that side of it, but the same principle applies here to the dogs. Like, you hit it right on the head, Carlos. It was like, it's a desire, right? If you desire it, that's great. Let's find the why. Like, let's find the how to, right? Like, don't tell me why you can't. Find the how to, right? If you have your why, here's your purpose. How do you get that? And a lot of times, it's going to take some creativity. Yes, it's going to have some hurdles. Yes, there's going to be road bumps. Yes, but if it's what you desire, there is a way to get it done. Sometimes it just take some creativity.
And Josh, really quick too on that.
Sure.
I'll say again, and I know you're like this. We have to hold ourselves accountable. And so when I had said earlier, no, I didn't feel like I hit every goal that I wanted to last year. That's 100% on me. It wasn't the dog's fault. It wasn't anybody in my life's fault. Any of the resource that I have. No, it was, again, did you put everything in place to make sure what you wanted happened? I had a lot of good things in place, but definitely could have tried better on that front. So that's what's been a big mindset for this year. It's like, there's so much want there. The goals are laid out. Get after it. Just go for it, and you're going to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. I think it's great. Last question I have for you, and then I want to get into a couple of these dog bowl questions, and then get you on your way, because I'm sure, like me, you have appointments and some training to get to. So I want to be respectful of that time. So the last question I have for you, Carlos, is what has been in a professional, I think you're like, it's such a unique and interesting path that you've taken, right? From being in that corporate environment to now being here. Like, what has now being a professional, right? So you're seeing all these dogs every single day, different owners, different personalities in the dogs, different personalities in the people. What has been like giving you that perspective? What has changed about your mental approach of how you go into your day to day? With whether it's with the dogs, with the people, like has anything changed in your perspective from being now in a professional position from where you were, a corporate position? Maybe this was more of a hobby.
Absolutely. I'd say first and foremost, it's when I'm handling a dog, whether it be a client's dog in front of them, whether it be a dog that I'm again, it's a client's dog and I'm working with my colleagues around in the space or a fellow trainer, I have to ensure that I do present my best self as much as possible due to the fact that, again, that's someone else's, really, how would I put it? Like, they care so much about that being. They just as much as, any family member, really. So I have to treat that dog with a lot of respect and care. Don't get me wrong. It's not about, sunshine and rainbows all the time and hugs and kisses, but it is at the same point, like respecting that dog in my hands, caring for them, really training them just as well with the appropriate intentions behind it that I would my personal dog. Because when that client ends up seeing their dog at the end result, I want them just to see how confident they look. I want them to see how confident they are in the task that they're doing, again, and training all these particular hunting dogs, with retrievers and pointers there as well. There's a lot of things that have to go into making sure that they're going to perform on game day. And so making sure that they feel like I've coached them up right, I've respected them through that process, and they do what the client signed up for. That's something that I have to wake up, come into the kennel, and really chip away at every day to ensure that we're hitting those strides. So, somebody really, you take the corporate side of it, somebody's come to you for a product, and we want to be sure that we fulfill that product that's been advertised to them. So I put that into place. And I would say the other thing too is just how I carry myself, even with my personal dogs too, whether you were to come see me at a hunt test, or we were to share a blind together, or hey, even at strike team meetups, right? Just because I'm a professional doesn't mean I'm any, I'm just not one of the group in Retriever Roadmap. It's, I want people to show up and say, hey, Carlos is strike team leader and is a part of Retriever Roadmap. He has a high standard for how his dogs perform, how he carries himself, and ultimately what he wants to accomplish. So I think making sure that we're always putting on that good front, it does matter to a lot of people. And frankly, it matters to me. I want to be sure that people feel that way too. At the end of the day, I got into this for a reason. I felt that I was successful at it early on, and I'm still successful today because I want to help other people and make sure that they feel that they can be successful too. That's something that I saw when I was working in finance, portfolio managers and relationship managers, everybody, that made those companies run. I was fortunate to work with some really good people, really smart people in that. And that's always what I saw from them, whether it be in meetings, emails, and presentations. These people were professional and they were confident and they knew they were all of those things. There's nothing wrong with knowing you can be particularly good at something and being sure that you feel that that's going to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm. I love the respect side of things because, when someone hears that, they may not fully understand, maybe what all goes into that, and if you kind of take a step back and, if training dogs is your hobby and something you look forward to all the time, that's great. When you make it a profession, now you have this obligation to be at your best every day. And you might be sitting there looking at it being like, yeah, well, of course, right? But think about you and your own job. All of us have days that we walk into an office, don't want to be there, right? Whether it's you're just in a bad mood, you had a fight at home, there's something that's just nagging on you, whatever it is. And if you go through the motions that day, or if you're in a bad attitude or snippy towards people, like you can probably get through that day and be just fine, right? Very few people are probably going to, notice, certainly not take exception. Like these dogs notice. These dogs feed off of it. We don't have the option to come in and be disrespectful, to neglect, to take a day off, to mentally check out. And there's, I think, so much weight to that. And, just simply you understand and appreciate that, Carlos. I mean, that right there, I think shows the quality of a human being, that you are, because there's plenty of people in this space, man, that they do not understand that. And so that's one of the many reasons I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. I'll share my little tidbit on that because I think it kind of echoes what you're talking about. One thing that really changed for me was the mentality that I would have towards the owners and the people, and understanding what a significant role they played, and understanding that training them is 10 times more difficult than training the dogs. I mean, from a people standpoint, you know what I mean? Like, the people standpoint is like, they're set in their ways. They are doing, especially if they're doing something wrong, but they think it's right. Like, how do you communicate that? How do you navigate through that water? How do you make them successful with it? And that's kind of been, the little bit of a shift for me. And I think it's all great stuff. But and the other part that I loved that you said was the strike teams. Like, I didn't even mention that Carlos is a Retriever Roadmap strike team leader. So if you're in the Northeast, you can go train with Carlos just by being a member. And I think that's a huge attribute to the program here. Okay, so we're going to do some dog bowl questions, Carlos. I can't let you leave without doing a couple dog bowl questions here. So
let's do it.
All right, so here we go. We are going to grab one of these here. And, okay. So I think this one probably applies to us both at least a little bit. I'm not sure what your winters are like up there. But what do you do to mentally stimulate your dogs during the winter months?
Great question. And, the Northeast is the Northeast. So you do so many opinions on how our winters are up here, but ultimately they're not. Let's just say it's not the South. Probably an easy one is to say obedience. However, get creative with it. So if your dog's really good at, doing place work, whether it be on or off lead, okay, challenge them even more so on that place. Can they do it on, a skinny railing that you found on the sidewalk or on a trail, right? Or could you do it with another dog in front of them or doing it next to them, right? Get creative with it. Put it into, your real life surroundings. You sometimes find it's funny. I took one of the puppies up to Boston this past winter, and it was a kind of a kids park at a nearby park I used to live nearby, and I was just having a place on everything. I even got some funny videos of it, and it was just like, things that are like swinging along or more like netting and stuff. And here he is, like, confidently doing everything, right? But then I put him in the car, and he was passed out. So it's just one of those. Get creative with your obedience. I think mentally it's important. If you have to do it in your basement, again, in your home, you can certainly do a lot. We'll even make it a game to kind of have these guys do, extended downs or place while, like, prepping dinner or making cocktails or, having some company over. Trust me, it's beneficial for the dog, not just for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would completely echo that. For us, we're usually hunting, through the winter. And so my dogs are plenty stimulated mentally through that time. But I would agree. And I think this goes back to, the comment that I had about, finding reasons of why you can't do something rather than how you can. And, for me, when I look at that and I go, okay, if I'm looking at the next 3 months of winter and I know I can't do water work because there's ice and it's frozen. I know I can't do much as far as retrieving work goes because we have 3 feet of snow. I know there's ice. Like, I get it. Like, you go through these check marks and you go, well, I guess we're just not doing anything for, say, 4 months. Or if you're like we were last year, this year's been fantastic winter-wise, but last year we looked at snow for 6 months. So, what do you just say? Well, half the year is gone, right? You still need to go make progress. But the creativity that you're talking about, Carlos, I think is so important because a training session doesn't have to look like how we think a formal training session looks or an obedience session looks. Like, it can be creative. It can be like, I love the situation you painted, Carlos. It's like, you're making dinner. Great. Let's work on place training. You can do both at the same time very successfully. You can find ways to utilize a garage, utilize a basement, utilize somewhere, somehow. There's got to be something that you can do. Maybe you go into a hardware store that allows dogs to go in there and do, like, there's places that you can go do this. You just have to be creative to go do it. Find the how can you, not the why you can't. I think that's a big one for me.
There you go.
Okay, so one more here before I let you go, which I think is, I just pulled it out here. I think it's super interesting, especially because you and I have this commonality. And I'd love for you to just give a quick background on this, but you'll understand what I'm saying here in a second. So the question is, can you talk more about the comparisons of training with a dog and training with a horse? And you have this. So first, give us a little background on this. I love this. Give us a little background on this, and then we'll go into the answer.
All right. So, all right. So, so where I work now is in northeastern Connecticut. It's about 90 minutes outside of Boston. And it's very country, as a city boy would say. And moving out to the country, I said, well, when in Rome, may as well learn how to do something more country. And funny enough, I actually was very afraid of horses my whole life. They're big. You didn't see them often. You see what you see on TV and other media. Just you never get behind a horse. They're going to kick you, And so I decided to challenge myself and actually seek out a trainer nearby that would take on an adult who wanted to learn how to ride. And I did that February of last year, and I've been going throughout the year. And my gosh, there is so much similar in terms of, again, intentionality, patience, having a plan and goals. But I think what it has had me understand is two things. The first is it's not about being forceful to get what you want. Even with so much as very light pressure associated with things or light, cues, even if you'd like to call it, it can make a difference to what you're trying to accomplish with a very simple task. I've been told time and time again, you can't manhandle a horse to go up into a trailer that's 3,000 pounds. But we can have them understand that there's only one thing they need to accomplish, and that's moving forward and having an ability to recognize that. So I'd probably say first that's what I've really learned is just have an understanding of what the dog knows and what you're trying to get them to accomplish. The same thing with a horse, and work with that and start small and build off of that. I think the second thing would be it's not always about our verbal, speaking less. I think you can say, when you speak, make sure that they understand what you're saying. So I don't think a horse right off the bat knows, whoa, the same thing that, a pointer doesn't know, whoa, right off the bat, or, right off the bat, a dog doesn't know it sit, or they don't understand what, dead means. We have to teach them what this communication is, what this language is. And we do it first, very silently and very, intentional with when we're giving off those verbal commands. So I probably say the second thing is it's taught me to just speak less and read the animal in front of me and guide them more.
I love both those because they're both so true. And I think working with the horses to me is given. I mean, there's no getting around it. When you make training dogs your job, your livelihood, your profession, there's always going to be the level of work involved, right? So for me, the horses are a pleasure thing. It's the same thing, but it's in a pleasurable mindset. So I feel like for me, I don't have the stress of going through a timeline. I don't have the stress of pushing. I don't have the stress with communicating with the owner, of teaching an owner, of doing all those things, right? And the things you said there, so spot on. Especially, I love the talking less. That's the one thing we see way too often with the dogs. And of course, from a dog standpoint, when most of the dogs we work with, they're viewed as family members. They're in the house, they're with the family, which is great. But we don't have to have full-on conversations with them like we do our significant other. And think about you tell a dog, come versus, come here, Nelly girl, what are you doing? Oh, you naughty little thing. Hey, come, you know what I mean? Come on, and you want the same result out of both, but one is effective and one isn't as far as you being clear. And so I love that. I love the pressure side of it because, again, so true. I mean, I've trained horses with guys that are very heavy-handed, kind of the old school, pop, 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 make them do it. And I've trained with people that are not. And I'll tell you, maybe it's just my personality, but I get way more out of my horses when I apply less pressure and teach them what it is I'm asking them to do. And so I love that side of it. I guess the only thing that I would add to that would be, from a handler standpoint, is that it's very easy. Like, you put somebody on a horse, and it's very easy for them to understand that they're driving the horse. They're driving that team, right? They may not always be in control, but they are the ones that are driving that team of two forward. I don't think it's as easily understood from the dog side of it. I mean, you are driving that team forward. Yes, you may not always be in control. Yes, the dog may have a mind of his own, one day. Yes, there's variables that are going to come up that, or maybe like WTF moments, are like, what happened there, right? Just like with a horse, right? But like, it's so easily understood, I think, because you're on top of the animal. The dog is the same way. You need to be the leader. You need to drive the ship. You need to drive the car. You need to be the one leading the team. And I think oftentimes it's not as clear, for people with with the dog side of it to the horse side of it. But I love it, man. I love I wish, gosh, man, like, this is just more and more reasons why I love you all the time, man. It's just like that right there. Like, I'm going to take something that I've been afraid of my whole life, and I'm going to go conquer this thing. Like, I love it. It's so great.
Oh, it's funny, just to wrap things up, it's even really why I wanted a Labrador Retriever so bad. I saw some videos of these dogs being handled, and I was like, is that dog on like a remote control? And ultimately, that's what challenged me to get into the game to begin with. And it couldn't be more thankful for it. I think about it every single day, night and day. And truly, if anybody has those goals out there, again, just especially in this space, reach out. A bunch of us is a great team. Retriever Roadmap, reach out to Josh, reach out to your fellow strike team members, and we can ensure that those SMART goals are accomplished.
Yeah, no doubt, buddy. Well, I appreciate you more than you know. Appreciate our friendship or relationship. Love what you do for everybody. With Retriever Roadmap. I mean, just can't say enough great things about you, my friend. So, and thank you so much for spending the time. I want to be respectful of your time, as I know you have to get going here. But again, thank you so much for spending the time today, and hopefully we can do this again in the future, because I really enjoyed that.
That'd be great. Thanks again, Josh.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you. Carlos Flores, everybody. And if you guys are into this series, keep up with this. So, we had Ben, from Guide. Now we have Carlos as a professional. We're going to kind of keep going on here and get another point of view as far as, mindset and how they're going into this training season. I think this is so important, so many valuable nuggets here. And, Carlos is just such a fantastic person to grab that stuff from. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll come at you again soon. Go have a great day. I'll leave you with this. If you are not intentionally getting better, you're unintentionally getting worse. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.